Good evening, friends. Welcome. How are you? Happy Thursday to you. Let me see if I can make this a little bit easier to see. What a beautiful spring day. A great day to be tasting wine together. Who's joining us this evening? There's been much here at Field & Main today. We're in the process, as I mentioned last week, of putting up a patio covering. So we have a new kind of portico covering that's going up over our patio space out front, and the guys are heavy into that work. Almost, I think, maybe another week or so, and we'll have that space open, which will be all the more magnificent with a day like we had today. So hopefully we continue to have spring coming forward. Also starting to see little things like May apples popping up, and hopeful, really hopeful for the impending season of morel mushrooms and ramps and all those wonderful things we anticipate about spring coming our way. And so if anybody has an abundance of ramps or morels on their property and wants to do some wine and food trading for that bartering, let me know. I would be happy to do that and entertain that. We'll get those items on the menu here. But it looks like Christine is joining us from Michigan. She's got the wine with her this time. Susan's happy Thursday to you, and thank you for joining us. Jan's with us, and the graphics are here too. They were just in celebrating Glenn's birthday, which was fun. Nice. Trish, Andy, and Kathy are with us, as they have been each week, which is great. Kristen and Johnny here. Awesome. Thanks, guys. And yes, gosh, what an amazing time of year it is when you get to start foraging for mushrooms and seeing everything else that can come away that way. The toppers are with us tonight, and Rob and Kathy are here. All right, guys. Eric and Wendy are with us as well. Fantastic. This is a great collection of folks. The Field & Wine tasting community, as we keep calling it on the little note that accompanies this broadcast. So what do we have this week, folks? The Kestenbaums are here. Craig and Lorna are here. As more and more folks join in, I'll pause a second. I'll also note, too, that on April 24th, which is a Saturday from 12 until 2, we're going to do our spring buying event. So another tasting opportunity, this time an opportunity to try 18 different wines for $30. You come in and get a chance to rotate through a series of tables, and all the wines will be for sale retail. We started working through that list today. I was running through that with Tony. Some exciting wines on that list. Wines that are more oriented towards spring and summer, kind of patio sippers, things that are easygoing, crisp whites, some rosés, some sparkling wines. So if you're interested in joining us for that, you can visit our website and make a reservation for 12, 12:30, 1 o'clock, or 1:30, I think, even 2 o'clock, I think, as well. So that's an option if you're interested. Please do join us for that. All right. David and Allison are with us tonight. That's great. And Kathy, you're here too. Wonderful. Leon and Kim, thank you for joining us. And the Swanbergs are back. Oh, great. I'm glad to have you guys with us too. All right, we're doing a red tonight. And I think next week, in fact, I can tease, it's part of that sort of series that we were working on when we did a Chardonnay and the Pinot Noir. Next week is going to be Riesling. So we know that in advance, and then we'll start to talk about all the other elements of the wine and really start to zone in on what makes Riesling. So something else to look forward to. So if you have that wine already, great. And if you don't, you're certainly welcome to drop by and pick up a bottle. And we will have a Riesling-oriented tasting next week. And we'll find out now what we're doing this week. All right, so what do we have? What color is this? What kind of profile is it? What do you see? Is it light? Is it more see-through? Is it more opaque and difficult to see through? So is it reddish in color, kind of ruby? Is it purplish in color? Has it have a sort of a tawny color? Does it have a brownness to it? What kind of viscosity does it show when you swirl it? And that viscosity starts to present itself in the form of layered legs or tears, kind of as they form in the glass. You can just barely start to see that. Lots of plum, a little bit woody, Glenn's saying. And I think Kathy just noted that that Rich is somewhat here. He isn't working tonight. Oh, good. And he has an actual glass he gets to play along. That's fantastic. Well, hello to you, Rich. Swanbergs are pointing out that it's a little bit ruby, and John is there with Melanie and Kelly, which is great. And a pretty cherry kind of color. Yeah, there's a definite reddish element. deep purple for you, Rob? You getting a little purplish quality? I'm seeing more ruby on my side, but that might be just the darker table that I'm working with. The garnet quality there, ruby for Christine, and Susan's pulling up garnet. Purple and dark, so there's a little bit of a range of color. Then I'm getting more ruby. I can see perhaps a little bit of that purplishness in the inside rim, or inside core, I should say. The rim is a little bit lighter, and so a touch more ruby. And what are you seeing for this? Leg-wise, the tiers that are forming are relatively fast. They're forming and they're there. So, maybe a medium weight wine. Dark ruby coming from Kathy. Yeah, so there's a darkness in the core of this wine, like a less kind of clear see-through element to it. If you're at the rim or the edge, you can read some writing, but in the middle, it's a bit deeper. So that color variation might indicate maybe a little bit of age. As you venture out to the rim, if it starts to change in color, it's an indication that perhaps you're starting to deal with something with a little bit more age to it. The Swanbergs decanted this about an hour ago. Lots of legs. Wow. It is opening up quite a bit, isn't it? That plum character that Glenn picked up on, the Grassix picked up on, is definitely there. A little bit medicinal, too. All right, so we're talking about medium weight wine, perhaps. A wine that has sort of a reddish, purplish cast to it, maybe a little bit of age, moderate alcohol. And let's start working on the aromas. What are we getting? Fruit, earth, wood. We got plum. What else are you picking up? There is a woody character too. The Grassix pointed that out as well. Anybody getting a little heat? Like I'm getting an alcohol ester kind of element. There's almost like a slight burn in the nose that comes from this. It's more like that experience if you're sniffing, say, bourbon. I'm not saying the smelling profile is bourbon oriented, but this smells like a little bit of a more of an alcoholic element. Candied something, candy. Candy is saying there's a candied something in this wine, which is great. A little bit of a cedar note, yeah. Rachel's saying pepper and vanilla, question mark. Not a ton. Kathy, thank you. And Christine's picking up a little bit of that burn. Yeah, there's like a singeing of the nose hairs, as Kathy's pointing out. Yeah, there's just this little bit of warmth that comes through on the aroma. Pepper and vanilla, I'm not picking up much of either of those necessarily. How about you guys? There's more of like there is that candied element. There's the plummy element. There's like a beet juice for me too here. Blackberry and cherry picking up. Chris is picking up. Like if you cut a beet raw and it starts to juice out a little bit, you're just smelling the outside. Or if you do juice beets and just drink that kind of beet juice, this has kind of got a little bit of that going on there too. There's elements that cedar, some more of a bourbony vanilla elements now coming on more. I am smelling that, and it looks like John at Expedition is as well. Melanie is with them too, I think. Picking up on that woody note that Christine's noting there. It's coming out more, and maybe because I'm searching for it. Yeah, there's some wood here then. That means there's going to be some oak aging perhaps. Chris, you've had it open for 2 hours though. Do you have any left? Or have you been that restrained to be able to leave this wine open on the counter for 2 hours? There's this super opulent fruit quality that was up front, and then now it's sort of playing out in a little more vegetal element. That beet quality is coming through to me. Yeah, there's a cooked vegetable quality now too. Okay, so we've got a little bit of fruit. We definitely have some wood. Anything earthy? Anything kind of forest floor? Anything gravelly? Anything that humus, sort of compost, manure, things of that sort? Susan, yeah, a little cabbage, a little cooked vegetable is coming out. Wow. Okay. Let's taste it. There's a little forest flora on the nose and maybe a bit of mushrooms, but not a super prominent note, right? It's much more about the other elements, the fruit and the wood. So taste this wine, and let's talk a little bit about the taste first before we get into the flavors. And the taste, is this a light, medium, or robust wine? Is it like skim milk, like 2% milk, or like whole milk? Is it low acid, medium acid, and high acid? And concentrate on the sides of your tongue, maybe underneath your tongue, and how much you're salivating to determine that acidity. See if it is just present, kind of, just faintly there, and then you're not salivating for a period of time. See if it makes you kind of flush and then dissipates a little bit more over time. That means sort of moderate acidity. And if you're just kind of a gusher and it keeps going and going and going, you might have a higher level of acidity. Most wines are in that sort of moderate acidity level. I like the black licorice call, Kimberly. Thank you. Yeah, a little chocolate cocoa element on the nose. When you taste this, it's got a little bit lower acid, low to medium. Yeah, it's not a super high acid wine. It's pretty ripe. How about the body weight? Is this a light-bodied wine, a medium weight wine, a more rich wine? Chris, I appreciate that very much. I was going to say, getting a margarita in Florida, it makes total sense. Looks from the pictures that you've been posting that you're having a great time down there, and I'm glad of that. So happy you could pop in and join us too. We're tasting a pretty moderate, robust red with a little bit of kind of a medium-ish, maybe low to medium. Some are saying medium to medium plus acid. I got a little bit medium plus medium. I'm still salivating a little bit, but there's some tannin that's drying, and that tannin is kind of adding an element of astringency that's sort of taking a touch of the acidity away, I think, or at least shortening the experience of it. And yeah, it's kind of a medium-bodied wine, 1% milk. Thank you for the designation there, Alyssa. Yeah, medium acidity, medium plus, medium to heavy weight, medium-bodied. Yeah, it's got a medium body. I would say it's kind of light to medium body, and then there's the tannin profile, definitely medium body, and there's a little bit more structure in the tannin that pushes it into sort of a medium plus body weight. But the actual viscosity of the wine itself, not just a consideration of the tannin, is much more on the moderate side. Chris has still got a little tannin structure, which is good, being open at 2 hours. And Swanbergs, are you losing the tannin after 1 hour? Because I've got a bunch. Like if tannin was Velcro, my lips would be kind of stuck because it's definitely grippy at this point. The power is there a little bit. Medium body, medium acid, some tannins, but not tons coming from Kristen. So we're kind of all over the range. We're in a range of moderate quality of the middle, from low to medium, medium plus acidity, from low to medium, medium plus tannin. So depending on who's tasting and what their predilection is toward acidity and tannin, there's that kind of range. But we're definitely a moderate wine, generally speaking. How about the flavor profile? And the heat too. So alcohol weight, we got a little bit of that nasal hair singe from the nose. I'm not picking up a ton of alcohol. Like, it's not a real warm burn on the back end. Yeah, the tannins are still present. I haven't gotten too much of the heat on the back end. And so after about an hour or so, the tannins have toned down for the Swanbergs. Got it there. Blackberry licorice, a little bit of basil. I like that call, Chris. Yeah, I definitely just picked that up too. There's kind of an interesting then variation on some of that cooked green cabbage, a little bit of beet, raw beet to basil. There's this savory herbal vegetable note happening here. There's toasted pine nuts. There's all elements, all kinds of interesting elements of wood that are coming through. So, moderate weight, medium plus tannin for me. Medium acidity. That's persisting a little bit more now. We've got a wood profile. We've got cherry, plum, blackberry, fruit kind of profiles. We've got some medicinal element in there. We've got a little licorice. We've got some basil. We've got some vegetal element, but not super pronounced on the palate. Some definite tannin. What should we be considering? Should we be talking about Pinot Noir? Gamay? Should we talk about Syrah, Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc? Should we be thinking about something like, we've tasted Aglianico, for example, or Tannat, or Petit Verdot? Where are you putting this in the world? What varieties are jumping out at you? Or what should we be considering if nothing's jumping out specific? Cabernet Sauvignon, Kathy's throwing out there. Candy's throwing out Merlot. Cab Sauv blend. Syrah, Rachel, throwing out there. Yep. I think Portugal. We could be thinking about sort of Touriga Nacional or a kind of a Douro red Portuguese blend. Chris is throwing out Cab Franc, possibly Merlot. So a blend, tastes like a blend. Blend is definitely something that people are playing with here. Leaning Merlot. I think Merlot is absolutely something you should consider. I mean, especially when you start to throw out plum and Merlot makes sense. Ursinia, Cab, or Syrah. For me, if this was Syrah, I would be thinking more like Shiraz. So Australian potentially being the option here for this. I guess you could be talking also, you could be talking about Washington State and Syrah from there, or kind of like Cab blend. I'm in like a Washington State sort of Australian kind of profile. Yeah, Chris is saying drinks very Oregon and Washington State. New World-ish. So how do we determine New World versus Old World, right? So when we say it's clearly New World, why is that? Susan, you're saying not a hot climate. So New World, but not a hot climate. You're thinking it's going to give us a little bit more kind of that freshness, not quite sort of the same raisiny or dried fruit character. It just has a ripeness to it. The fruit is pretty ripe, but it isn't dried. And so perhaps that is an indication in the New World side of things that it's a hot climate, not a hot climate rather, where you have some cooling elements. So a high hillside, a coastal influence perhaps. Jan's thrown out California. So we could be talking about a Bordeaux style blend maybe in California. Washington. We could be talking about it in Australia or South Africa. I don't think this is South American, but if someone else feels otherwise, let me know. So Old World versus New World, that primary fruit, that fruit character that's punchy and up front, a little bit more tannin and acid like this could certainly be found in the Old World, but it's the fruit character, I think, that in particular is starting to showcase more of a New World presentation. Although, we should consider, right, or at least you should have a thought when you're saying Merlot like that, maybe we should be thinking about the Veneto, kind of the northeastern part of Italy. Maybe it's something from that realm. And for that reason, you think about it, and then you'd say, I don't know, I think that's probably too cool an element. I mean, too old worldly element. The acidity is not quite there. This is also getting a good dollop of oak, and a presentation of oak like that might not be exactly what you'd expect to find from the old world. Craig, thank you for that. Yeah, absolutely Zinfandel. Why not consider Zinfandel here? I think part of the canon structure might not be very Zin oriented, but and the earthy elements, remember when we said fruit, earth, and wood, and what we were looking for from the earth side, there was a little hint of some earth, but not as much. And that's Chris's point here too, is that without that more present form of the profile, then we're not necessarily leaning as much toward the old world. Kathy's venturing out too, which is a nice. The fruit, more fruit, less terroir, kind of a little bit more northwest, a little bit more rustic. And we've definitely had some rustic wines that come from the old world, but yes, I mean, that kind of lacking level of specificity and just sort of that fruit character is what would take me to the new world too. So I can get behind the idea, I think, pretty comfortably of the new world, and now it's a question of placing it and varietals. Like I'm making a case in my head at this point of maybe a Shiraz Cab blend from Australia, maybe just a Merlot Cabernet blend from Washington, from the Columbia Valley. Maybe we're talking Walla Walla, but I don't know that it has that level of specificity in this wine. And at 25, I don't think we would, but Swanbergs are a blend, heavy on the Merlot. Cab Sauv dominant blend for Kathy, with Merlot and a bit of Cab Franc. Yeah, there's that possibility. I kind of like the idea of a little bit of Cab Franc in there for some of that vegetal quality that we were talking about, or Cabernet for that reason too, which might be the reason it takes me away from sort of Shiraz, although I kind of like the Shiraz Cab idea from Australia. This is a wine it's easy to have a lot of it in your mouth. You want this to fill your mouth. Candy's saying that Kevin is noting an Aussie Merlot. That'd be interesting. So something perhaps like McLaren Vale with Cab and Merlot blended. 2018. Jan's going Cab. Cab, you're going, Jan, from California? Wow, that vanilla element. John from Expedition Vintage was saying that you just smelled like a vanilla pod just being scraped, and that's certainly coming out more and more. Yeah, I'm going back and forth between Washington and Australia for me right now. I think if it was Australia, it would have a little bit softer profile with the tannin. Not quite as rustic with them. I think that leads me back to Washington. How about you guys? What do you think? Chris is throwing out Columbia, Yakima Valley. Yeah, I mean, central Washington, warm, dry. You'd get ripeness, and it would be difficult to kind of keep acidity fresh, and so they might have a little bit of an earlier pick, which would give you perhaps some of that vegetal element that we're getting. High heat and lots of irrigation. Yeah, that molasses element, that cooked sugar, that char on the barrel that's going in here from that vanilla note, some of that cedar quality we picked up. There's that pine nut, cocoa, all of those spiced elements. So yeah, Cab dominant, Cab Merlot blend, Cabernet Franc, so Bordeaux blend, kind of a claret style production, a Bordeaux style production from Washington. And maybe it's got a tiny bit of age, tiny bit, for that rim variation. So I might go 2016, 2017, so between 3 and 5 years old. A Cab Merlot blend from Washington State. Sounds about right. Tastes about right. What do you think of this wine? Do you like it? Do you want to drink this wine? Chris, you don't need to answer. You've already drank the wine. Yeah. It's delicious. Yeah, Melissa, I agree with you. Christine, you love it. This is right up your alley, Christine, with it being a nice red, a bold red. And Chris Courtney drank most of it. Oh, that's awesome. Very drinkable. That tannin structure is at first kind of overwhelming a touch, but then it just sort of becomes a compelling part of the wine. And you can just drink it. Craig, you're saying 14% alcohol, 2016 Washington. That's pretty cool. Good call. Okay. I think 14's fair. If we're talking Washington Cab Merlot blend, I think we're definitely we're definitely probably north of 14%. So some of that we got on the nose, but it wears it extremely well on the palate. That's great. All right. Let's find out what we got, because I think we're all pretty much on the same page here, which is neat. We got 2016, 2017, 2018. Yeah, this is 2018. A Cabernet Sauvignon from Columbia Valley. It's a wine called Be Human. This is a wine, if I recall, coming from Columbia Valley. Well done, everybody. This is Cab, but I don't know that it has... It's probably got a little bit more in it, too. I can't remember. I've just heard about this particular label. This is a wine that's being made with the winemaker, former winemaker of Chateau Saint Michel, if I'm remembering correctly, and a couple of guys who just bought a tremendous amount of acreage and are going to be doing a really fantastic series of estate wines, this being one of the levels. And yeah, that's really cool, huh? Be human. Indeed. Be hospitable to one another. That's great. Fun wine. Wines of Washington, that take me back for sure. That's where I began drinking wine. I was a college student at Whitman College and didn't have much of a drinking past. My teens were not studied with keggers and things of that sort. I was a little bit too goody two-shoes. But when I was out in Washington, there were like 9, 10 wineries at that point. Now there are hundreds in Walla Walla. And I lived next door to the gentleman whose job it was for the fraternities to aggregate their alcohol order for the weekend. And I would be placing orders for like the Seven Hills Merlot, and everybody else was getting beer runs. And so I began to drink wine in Walla Walla, and so it's nice to be back in Washington tasting wine again from there. It is a really cool spot where you get Bordeaux blends, but you also get Syrah that's grown beautifully there, and then you get Semillon that's grown in there, and Chenin Blanc and Chardonnay. So cool stuff happening, but as Chris pointed out too, just really hot, and it's often irrigated from the Columbia River just to maintain. We think of the Pacific Northwest as being the Pacific Northwest, and on the eastern side of the Cascades, you've got a lot of dryness. You've got almost desert-like conditions. It's where if you're out toward sort of near Spokane, they tested the Mars and the lunar rover out there and the Mars rover, because the topography is very simple like that. There were a lot of wheat fields and a lot of lentil fields, and so pretty cool wine. Nice to be back in Washington, and all the better to be back there with you. And Melissa, yeah, you got to head back out that way and visit. It's pretty neat because Walla Walla now, Walla Walla has a unique kind of situation where you can taste some of the wineries at the airport, and they have little sort of corrugated sheds right at the airport, and you can kind of meander through a winery row, or you kind of visit Main Street and 2nd Street in Walla Walla itself, and a whole bunch of folks have a cellar door there where they're just pouring wines, and they source fruit and or have their vineyards out in the Columbia Valley, which are just, you know, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours away, and they bring them back into to Walla Walla, or they go up into Woodinville, for example, where there's another sort of situation where there's a series of wineries who have kind of a cellar door option for you to taste there too, a tasting room. So cool spot. And yeah, Chris, there's tons of hops there too, beer, and Walla Walla is just a neat town. It's a cool town. It's the first town west of the Mississippi to have a symphony, so there's quite a bit of culture there. There's 3 colleges there. It's a neat spot, a great place to visit, worthy of putting a little trip together. Well, yeah, that cocoa's coming out. This is just getting more and more interesting, this wine as it sits here and opens up. I hope those of you who have a little bit left, I hope you enjoy the remaining drops. Chris, I think you might have to put Courtney down, lie her down for a nap at that if she's finished most of this bottle. It's got, as we were talking, about 14, where's the percentage here on this one? It's tucked away somewhere probably. Yeah, right there. 14.5, so it's, yeah, it's got a little alcohol to it. Well, once again, to reiterate, if you're interested, we have a spring wine buying event coming up on April 24th in a couple weeks. We have spots available for that, and you can visit our website to make reservation for it. And Tegan, a hello to you, or waving hello to you. It's great to get a chance to at least know you're there and you know that I'm here and thinking of you. And I understand you'll be coming out our way for Mother's Day brunch. We're going to do a Mother's Day brunch on May 9th. We'll do 3 seatings, kind of a 10 o'clock, sort of closer to noon, and then closer to 2 o'clock seating too. So that's something to look forward to, a little bit of something different. Well, there we go. Special wine, great tasting. And next week, for those of you that will be joining us, we'll be doing Riesling from somewhere in the world. We'll figure that part out, and we'll figure out the vintage, but we'll be able to talk more in detail about Riesling itself and what makes it a very special varietal and how to identify it. So until then, have a great week. Enjoy this budding spring, and I'll see you then. Cheers, everybody.